I first met this bloke, Warren Goodyer, at Beef 97 in Rockhampton, earlier in 1997. And I was enormously impressed with what he was doing. And as you can see there, Warren is sliding a knife through a big pumpkin as if it was made out of butter. And Warren's skill is in sharpening all kinds of edged implements. He's been running his display and selling his wares at country shows for the last 6 years or so. And after watching him for 5 minutes and seeing what he could do with even an edge on even a relatively cheap knife, if you like, he's a rather violent person, as you can see. I said to him, look, we've got to make a video on this because this is something that everybody needs to know about, because everybody has knives or scissors or planes or chisels at home that they need to sharpen. Now, the video you're about to see is a lengthy one. It's full of information. It's full of skill and technique that Warren has developed over many years. And after watching it, you will be able to sharpen any implement that you like to name. Now, Warren, what made you decide to do the video?
I was stupid.
Yeah. Well, after spending 2 weeks here making it, I suppose you could say that.
Oh, well, I think, Chris, that enormous number of people have come up to my bench over the years, particularly at field days, and they've asked me, how do you do it? Is there any magic? You know, they think there's a guru who comes out of the Himalayas and sharpens and all this type of stuff. And basically it's as simple as pie, you know. Yeah. As long as you've got the right gear, yeah, and just a bit of technique and stuff like that, you know, you can handle it. And, you know, so basically this is by request.
Right. In
other words, a lot of people have said to me, look, for God's sake, put a video on so I don't have to keep coming back watching you, you know, like 3 or 4 times during the field. They let me get on.
And still not knowing exactly how to do it.
Yeah, because, you know, I've come here to buy a lawnmower or a tractor, a couple of pumps and some bulls, and I've spent 4.5 hours on your bench. It's also good for me because instead of teaching people how to sharpen all the time, I can actually get down to what the business is, which is really and truly showing the various things that they need, you know, to actually sharpen.
All right, well, let's get down to business and let Warren show you what you need in order to sharpen. Enjoy.
What I'll be using in the video to sharpen with are Australian-made both diamond rods and diamond plates. These are made wholly in this country. And I just want to give you a bit of an introduction so that when I pick it up and when I use it, you'll know exactly what I'm doing. This rod here is a 6-inch diamond rod, and it is designed basically for the hunter and anyone, 4-wheel drivers, things like that, caravanners, anyone who wants to have a sharp knife on the move. So this is a 10-inch, or actually 12-inch diamond rod. This is actually a knife sharpener. It does exactly the same job as an oil stone, only it's 55 times faster. I'll be using that and showing you how to use them. This is a 600 grit mesh diamond plate. The IVs are flat, they stay flat, and they're very, very good. I consider this size as actually a bit small for general purpose, particularly on big knives. But, you know, there are a lot of guys who sharpen things on them quite successfully. This one here is the bulldozer. This is the 200 grit diamond plate. This is the basis of all sharpening. Having one of these will save you literally hours upon hours upon hours. It's flat. It has an enormous amount of cut and life, and frankly, I would be dead without it today. They're just absolutely fantastic. This is a 600 grit version of the small one. This one, when you get it, has a fair bit of cut, but it actually smooths right out and it gives you an absolutely incredible finish. This is a smooth steel. It's actually made in Melbourne, and it is the basis of keeping an edge on a knife. I'll be talking more about that later. These are little hand laps of 3 different grits. This one here is one I've had made specifically It has a 400 grit or a medium cut on one side and 1,000 grit on the other. I've had this made basically for doing mulesing shears or shears, hand shears, but you can do knives on them, and also you can do narrow gutted chisels, and frankly that's a little gem. If you had one of those and one of those, you wouldn't need anything else. This plate is 8 inches by 4 inches. Woodworkers buy them like they're going out of style, because you can do big planer blades on them, router bits down here. The diamonds handle tungsten, by the way, very, very easily. They're flat, and frankly, there's nothing you can't sharpen on that. Sitting over here on my left or your right, as you're looking at it, these aren't knife sharpeners, they're actually chainsaw files. And they're made, this one is made from about 150 grit synthetic diamond, big yellow ones, and these things will outlast about 300 ordinary files. They're very quick, and they come in 3 different sizes for your chain to fit your particular chain: 732, 3/16, and 532. Now, if I was demonstrating this and I was trying to show you how to sharpen things on this particular thing, this video, as I talk to you, I'm 52. By the time I finish the video on sharpening, I would be 104, and frankly, you wouldn't be seeing it. This is what they call a double-sided oil stone. It's out of shape, and frankly, the problem you've got isn't the fact that you can't sharpen, it's the fact that you try to sharpen on these, and they were never intended to do anything but to put a bit of an edge on, or a final edge on, a knife that was already ground. And frankly, the problem with all sharpening today, if you go back 80 years or 100 years ago, everyone used to have a big sandstone grinding wheel in their backyard, or if you had the farm, you probably still got them out there. They're all rusted. You either turned them by hand, and you took the shoulder out of the knife with that, and then you put the edge in with your oil stone. Once these big sandstone grinding wheels went, you were left with this, or you were left with mechanical electric-driven grinders, which are far, far too harsh on knives, and they've got the ability to stuff a knife up in about 2 seconds in the hands of an amateur. A good guy, yeah, can handle that without any trouble, but the average bloke doesn't have a bloody clue. So if you've got this sitting in your shed, and your wife says to you, "Sharpen me knives, please, Harry," you've immediately got a problem, because you think, you go down there, you say, "Geez, I'm going to be down there for 3 weeks," so you put it off. And she says to you the next day, "Will you please sharpen me knives, Harry?" And he goes, "Yes, darling, I'll do that tonight, or I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do it next week, I'll do it next month." I've said about 8 million times, actually, these things save marriages, because you can do a knife on that and put an edge back on a knife with this in about 25 seconds. And so she doesn't have 90 minutes or 90 days to think very, very bad thoughts about you. So you'll get many more cuddles, you know, if you've got a diamond rod, compared to having an oil stone. That's just basically one reason you go and buy the blooming things, you know, because you've got a happy wife. And we don't have happy wives, fellas. We are in trouble. So we'll leave it at that. That's basically what I'll be using, and you can see for yourself when we get down to sharpening just exactly how good these products are. And if you've bought them from me and you've bought the video for the simple reason that you want to know how to use them, you will know exactly how good they are. If you haven't bought them, by the time the video is over, you will have a full understanding as to why you should. So that's basically all I'm going to say right now. In this particular segment, we'll get down and do a little bit of work. Right, well, before you really get down to sharpening, you've got to understand various terms that are used amongst knife professionals. And one is, and I'm just going to point to this here, what is an edge? Now, the edge is unbelievable in the terms of that it is a point actually in space. At the apex, now the apex is the joining piece of these two angles. That's right up the top there. So it's actually a point. So if you have a knife edge, you've got a combination of points. I might just pick a knife up here at the moment and just show you. You've got a combination of points that go from here through to the tip. Now, if there was ever an old saying, and you hear a lot of old sayings in the knife game, 99.7% of them are untrue, but one of the best sayings that I've heard is that if you can actually see your edge with the naked eye, you just don't have one. If you can actually see it. If you can hold the knife there and see the edge, you don't have an edge. So therefore, it's a point closest to infinity. And we're going to be talking about in the video how you actually get closest to infinity. Now, there's another term called bevel, which is this and this. That angle and that angle. They're called bevel, and they actually are supposed to form the edge. And this one here, you'll hear this all the time. Guys will say, there's too much shoulder in the knife. There's too much shoulder in the knife. Rah, 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 rah. So this is called shoulder. It's actually the thickness in the knife directly behind the edge. Now, the problem you've got with knives is that where you have too much shoulder, you cannot get an edge. And that's as simple as that. There's another term that I'll be using here which is very, very important, and that's this one here, which is called burr. It's B-U-R-R. Now, burr is actually a rolled edge of metal that indicates when you're sharpening on this side, it comes up on the other side of the blade. And it's an indication to you that you're getting close to the vertical point in the centre of the knife. Now, if you say run a burr, you can actually get a little roll over. If you run a good burr, it means that you've actually ground the knife over and it's started to roll. This is the single most important thing in sharpening knives, burr. So if you can understand that, you can sharpen basically anything that you want to without any trouble in the world, as long as you have the right type of equipment. And that's about as serious as I'm going to get in this. So there we are again. I'll just go over it for you. The edge is a minute point closest to infinity, which is at the apex, which is right at the joining point of these two angles. They're called bevel. This thickness here, that's called shoulder. And burr is a roll edge of metal that indicates that you're coming to the vertical point in the knife. So in other words, I'll grab this Emma Learn knife here and show you again. In other words, if you sharpen this side and you could run your finger up here and feel the rolled edge of metal, and if you could just feel it, you would have a burr. It's rough. But if you could roll it and you could get and it really rolled over and you got a good burr and you could really feel it, it would indicate that you've passed the actual vertical point in that knife if you take a line through the centre of the knife. Right, well that's about as technical as we're going to get, except to explain to you this. If you have a look at this diagram here, this is the way I've been sharpening knives now for 8 years. And I couldn't sharpen a knife for life the money when I first started in this business. We're actually going to show you in this video how to get rid of all this, change the angle of the knife, put your bevel in right at the top, and take the shoulder out of the knife, which means you're going to have to thin it out. Sharpening knives particularly is 95% perspiration. No, actually it's about 99.1% perspiration, and whatever the rest of that is in terms of making it up to 100, inspiration. Basically, when you want to sharpen something, you're only confronted with two different types of edges. It doesn't matter where you go, you've only got a single bevel or 2 bevels. Now, as you can see, you've got an enormous number of things: chainsaws, clipper blades, wood chisels, ordinary chisels, plain blades, drill bits, butting knives, secateurs, shears, guillotines, scissors and cattle dehorners that are all basically 1 bevel. Knives have 2. If you know how to sharpen one of those and one of them, you can sharpen basically anything. Right, that's about as technical as I'm going to get, with the exception of another, just one very, it's actually very important, which is this bevel angle, this bevel here that forms the edge has to be even. In other words, you have to be able to grind out the same amount of metal from the heel of the knife through to the tip. Now this is, it's not an art, it's just grinding. As I mentioned earlier, it's 99.7% perspiration and about whatever the rest is to make up 100 inspiration. So in other words, if you're looking at the edge of the knife from the top and your bevel is doing like this and then it's straight and then it goes like this, you don't have a chance in the world of having a sharp knife. One question I've got it written up here, one question that even I was confused on, and 8 million other people in the world, or 8 billion other people in the world, is what's the correct angle to have a knife at? Well, if the knife will cut and you can get it to cut and do what you want the knife to do, you've got the correct angle. But if you want it really professionally accurate, I've got it written here, anything under 25 degrees. Now in some cases you can bring that down to 12 or 15 degrees. And the way I'm going to show you how to sharpen knives is you'll have an angle or an edge on a knife that's going to look like this. It will be like that, and then it will come in, and then it will come in. So basically you are going to be looking at one, this is very magnified. There's your edge, and there, that's your knife blade itself. And I really think that's basically it, you know. We'll do some sharpening now and show you how things are going to go. What we're going to do is we're going to rub this knife until we bring a burr up on this side, on the top. Now you remember a burr is a rolled edge of metal. And if you keep your knives as flat as you possibly can, you will pull the entire shoulder right out of the knife. There are some guys who won't agree with this, but it's the best way of actually getting your knife in good condition. Now one of the good things with these plates is that if they clog, all you need to do is wash them. And there's the amount of metal that's actually come off that plate. I've got a bucket of water under me here, and we just dip it in the bucket of water and away we go. So we're going to actually run a burr the full length of that knife. It makes it a bit difficult for me doing it this way because my hand is actually on the bench itself. Now if your knives are real thick at home, you know, you're trying to rejuvenate a couple of skinners or whatever, it's just purely and simply don't give up until you run that burr straight through the edge. You'll feel it roll when it comes up. There's a lot of guys that would like to do this on a linishing belt, which is fine, with the exception that they do tend, if you're not careful with them, to overheat the knife. This plate doesn't. Okay, well we've done one side of the knife there. Now we've sharpened this side and your burr has come up here, right through. Now what you do now is very, very difficult. It's so difficult that you've got to put your knife down there again, take the burr out and run another burr this side. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, and I'll do that and then we'll come back to you. Okay, well what we've got here is the burr rolled up on this side now. Now, there's two ways you can finish this. You can go onto something finer. If you've got a flat stone, go for it. You know, it'll take you about a half an hour to put a final edge in. This will put a final edge in on one of these. It'll take you probably about 2 minutes. But I'm going to put the edge in on a diamond rod. Now, these things are absolutely superb for long-bladed knives. But it's important when you see me use it that you just understand exactly what I'm doing, because you don't do this. This is not what you think is a steel. This removes metal and you use it accurately. So what I'm going to do is come up a little bit. Instead of being flat, I'm going to increase the angle just slightly, maybe 1/8 of an inch off the back of the spline of the knife. Don't ask me what degree that's going to give you, because I can't tell you. The action with a diamond rod is this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the tip. This is what it looks like fast. But in fact, I'm still removing metal, and this allows the rod to remove a little tiny bit of metal at a time. This is why I look so stupid when I use it, and blokes tell me, "You don't use a steel that way." You work one side of your knife. Now, if you'll notice, where my thumb is, it's directly on the back of the spline. The back part of the knife's called the spline, and I'm actually holding the knife rather rigidly, although I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the actual blade itself. One of the reasons I'm spending so much time on this side is having trouble focusing the tip of the rod. Now, that's one side. You come back the other side. Just increase your angle about 1/8 of an inch and you work a bit more metal out into the tip. Your thumb for coming in is here. It's on the actual blade of the knife itself. Now, to put your edge in, just increase it slightly more and hone your edge in. Now, as you can see, the difference between that and a knife that hasn't been, this is a knife that actually hasn't been steeled. As a matter of fact, I've made a mistake on it here, because I haven't actually got that final burr out yet. If you find that happen to you, don't worry about it. Just go back and you can either run it out or stroke it out. That final burr is actually called a wire edge. So you can actually work that wire edge out purely and simply by stroking it out with a diamond rod. There's a couple of other things that you can do to increase that or enhance that edge. Now that knife is, you know, what you might say, it's fairly sharp. You can tell the difference mainly because of the sound it makes as it goes through the paper. But I'm going to show you a little trick. And if you had a piece of 4x2 Oregon, you just take your knife edge or any 4x2 softwood and just run it lengthways through the blade. Get your fingers out of the way and things like that. Just a nice piece of 4x2 Oregon will do. And just run the edge through it. Now what that does, that just takes all the roughness out of the knife. Now, what I like to do from this point on for myself is that I like to bring the knife edge down to just as close as I can get it to infinity. And these 1,000 grit rods are just absolutely beautiful because they're so fine. Grit, by the way, runs, the higher the number, the smoother the actual cutting surface is on the rod. And just give it a few strokes like that. Now, I was just about going to cut that, but I'll lean over here, and here's your smooth steel. Can you possibly tell me, with a 1,000 grit edge, or even a 600 grit edge, why in the hell you would bash the knife to death on a rough steel? Makes no sense to me whatever, because this thing's like a razor. Now, you shouldn't actually be able to hear the sound the knife makes on the steel, and you carry it through from the hilt of the knife right through to the tip and basically hold the same angle as you go through. What a steel is it keeps the edge on a sharp knife, not sharpens a blunt knife. So here we come for the test, and that knife is as sharp as its brother. Now, used in a butcher's situation with this edge on it, that knife would keep its edge for 3, 4, 5 months without even touching it, just by using a smooth steel. This is the last of my cigarette papers. Now, as you've seen, this type of edge is extremely smooth, and it just slices through things so that, you know, it doesn't exist. This is because the shoulder's out of the knife, and the bevel is actually right at the end of the blade. It's still there, the bevel's still there, but it's right at the bottom. Now, this gives the blade strength as well as cutting ability. And just to show you a little bit, to see whether this edge will last, and this knife has a lot to do with the edge. The simple reason that good quality steel keeps its edge. The steel in this knife comes from Solingen in Germany. This is actually happening, and there's no trick photography about it or anything like that. Now, what you'll find is that when we finish this, I'm going to steel the knife. One of the most commonly used knives in the country are these two. This you skin fish, wacko. This you skin sheep with, cut their throats, skin cattle, do whatever you like. That's called a siding knife, I call it a skinner. And this is a 6-inch curved boning knife. You'll notice that they've both got swept back blades. This knife I've actually pulled the shoulder right out of, so that I'm going to show you just a couple of things that may be helpful to you in putting absolutely a razor sharp edge in on one. Firstly, when you, this is a 600 grit diamond plate. It's the brother to this one. A lot of guys in the abattoirs actually, you know, do like that. They hold onto this